Beyond the Wrench with jayg Goninen from WrenchWay.
On this week's episode of Beyond the Wrench, I am really happy to have Loren Meija join me. Loren is a BMW technician for MBI Motors and had some really interesting insight into our industry through the eyes of a technician. And I think our listeners are really going to enjoy this because it comes from a place I think that is good, wanting to improve the industry, wanting to make the lives of technicians better. So, Loren, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Jay.
Good. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're a technician. What got you interested in this business in the first place?
Well, I always had an interest in vehicles as a kid, and that extended, well into high school. And I was fortunate enough to have an automotive program that still had a mentorship relationships with the dealerships in Portland, Oregon. So after doing 3 years of automotive classes in high school, I was able to qualify for an apprenticeship program through a dealership while I was still in high school. So I started job shadowing technicians when I was a senior in high school. And the rest is kind of history as far as that goes. I got pulled right in and spent 14 years between two BMW dealerships, and then also spent some time with a Audi Porsche dealership and a Jaguar Land Rover dealership before ultimately ending up at an independent shop where we service BMWs and Mercedes.
Very cool. So how impactful was that initial mentorship in making you successful and kind of guiding you to where you are today?
It was very important, I would say, towards my skill development and also to just the success in the industry. Like we had previously spoken before, I was fortunate because even in the early 2000s, automotive tech programs in high school were very few and far between across the country. And I had, like I said, the opportunity to be able to get a foot in the door at a dealership when I was still in high school, and then be able to communicate with them directly about my intentions to attend a technical program, whether it was going to be UTI, which I actually ended up choosing to go to the community college route and got an associate's degree. And, one of the benefits I felt of that was, you spend a term in school and then you spend a term at the dealership. And what that does is they give you a curriculum for when you're at the dealership to reinforce the skills and the knowledge that you learned in that term in school. So there's certain things that they would like you to be exposed to when you do that swap from in class to in the shop, to reinforce a lot of the theory that you've gone over and just how you apply it to the vehicles that you work on. Because, people talk about knowledge and wisdom a lot, and, you can learn all the book smarts, but until you put it into real world application, you don't really have that wisdom. So that was one of the things that, like I said, I was fortunate that I had a program that focused on those kinds of things, being hands-on, and then also to having technicians at the dealership that I started at who were very interested in my success and, really pushed me beyond just the basics of taking things apart and putting it back together, but to really understand not only how it works, how to repair it properly, but then also how to make sure you're documenting your time stamps, and to have a legible and intelligently written story so that when that goes to warranty, they're like, okay, all the boxes are checked, we can pay you.
Well, and I think that's the kind of stuff that is so important for a technician, especially in today's world, to be able to understand, because it will impact their paycheck. Their ability to write up an RO and actually have it be legible and have it, be able, even from the customer pay side, where if you're not putting the detail in there and truly treating it in a professional manner, you're leaving a lot of money on the table. And you're not, not to say it's all about money, but I think being able to articulate what you're seeing is not easy. It's even for me, it's not easy to be able to take what I'm thinking and put it down on paper. So I think that skill right off the bat is big. And then, I think it's so cool for me to hear that you had mentors that helped guide you, because I I think that's so impactful in terms of the success a technician is going to have based on the level that, or the willingness that a team of technicians that's already in the shop is going to be in terms of bringing that person in and the pride they take, because not every shop's that way, right? I think we've
Right.
all seen those shops before where it's not the most accommodating place for a new technician.
Right. And like you were saying with the writing up of the story, one of the lessons that was taught to me, and I still apply even now at an independent shop, is, you know, when you're writing a warranty story, obviously your customer is the manufacturer, and they want to know specific details as far as how you might have came to a conclusion and the repairs that you made. And it can get very technical, and you use a lot of jargon that may not be sensible to the customer. So one of the things that was suggested to me by other technicians is you got to strike that balance, you know what I mean, between making it legible for the manufacturer so you can get paid as far as warranty, but then also conveying the value in the repair and the expertise in the story to the customer so they can understand. It's especially more important in the independent side because, you know, dealing with a BMW or a Mercedes or Land Rover or a Jaguar, repairs can be expensive. So if you're including enough of that technical information when they know, like, this takes an experienced person to be able to do this correctly, and I feel confident in this repair, and they can read that and see that in the way that your shop presents it, it goes a long way for people. I mean, in the age that we live in, everyone has into the details of the things that they purchase. You know what I mean? Everyone researches everything. So when you can give them that same satisfaction when they pick up their car and they read the story of how much effort we put into it, the technical expertise and resources that we needed to repair it, and then ultimately give them back a repaired vehicle, if they can see that, you know, when they read their copy of their repair order, you usually end up with a happy customer, even if their repair bill, you know, was $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, because they understand that this was a process and it's not, you know, it's not simple, because we get that a lot in our industry. All you have to do is just plug in the computer and it tells you what's wrong. You know what I mean? So when you really give them that microscope into this is how it works, it goes a long way. And I think any shop owner would agree with that, especially when you get into higher dollar repairs. They don't want to just know, well, your engine blew up. Well, why did the engine blow up? What happened? What caused the failure? And to, like I said, and to express it in ways that a normal car customer can understand. And, you know, we're not talking about a car enthusiast or a hobbyist. We're talking about someone who just gets in the car, turns the key or pushes the button. They can understand that they got a repair that was valuable and done correctly. So that's something that I've stressed to others that are younger than me, and something that I continue to practice today.
Well, I think so many technicians yearn for more respect. And, you know, we talk about better pay and we talk about all of these different factors that go into being represented as a professional. And I look at that as such an opportunity to show off your skills when you're able to adequately translate what you're looking at to a customer and really showcase the skills that you've got. And when we don't look at it that way and we don't treat an RO in that fashion, and it doesn't look professional, and then we wonder why we're not, you know, we're not getting the respect level that we desire. I see that as a really good opportunity to show off your professionalism and show off, you know, how talented you are.
Right. And, you know, that's one of the things, you know, it's important because all of us want, I guess you could say, a resurgence of the industry. We want this industry to be desirable to new talent. And we want the image of it to change because, you know, as you and I previously discussed, the automotive industry and the tech industry, you almost can't separate anymore. They're almost one and the same now. You have cars that come with Google Play or, you know, Apple Car Drive, and, you know, your cell phone now is an integral part of the vehicle experience. So, you know, we have to change that narrative and the perspective of what a technician is so that they can understand that we are highly trained professionals. We do technical work that's on par with someone who's running a machine that builds silicon wafers. You know what I mean? It's the same process a lot of times. You know, you learn the skill, you apply it, and, you know, hopefully that you're successful in your jobs as you move along as a technician or whatever industry you're in. But the main point is to get the image and the viewpoint and the perspective on that same level for our industry, because it's fallen behind and we need to get it there, because otherwise we're going to continue to lose people who are interested in electronics, mechanical things, hydraulics to other industries. I was going to say a lot of the techs that I know have left. They're now employees for companies like Lam Research that builds machines. They build the machines that make silicon wafers, and they're here in the Portland area. Another one that's big in poaching technicians in this area is Boeing. If you can use a DVOM, Boeing will take you.
Well, I think it goes to show how sought after a skill set of a technician is, not only in our industry, and I think that segues really nicely into really our main focus, our main point of this conversation today, which is to try and understand technicians maybe at a deeper level, right? I think a lot of times we'll go into conversations. One of the things that drives me crazy about our industry is we'll have conversations about technicians from consultants and everybody from all around, yet a lot of times we leave the technician out of those conversations, and it drives me absolutely nuts, because you're providing the firsthand experience and the exposure to what you see on the shop floor that unless you're out there every single day, you're not going to know all of the small ins and outs of what happens out there. So let's dive into this topic a little bit. Let's talk about how we understand a technician in general, and really, who is today's technician? Who is it that you're surrounded by? One of the things that I always had mentioned to a lot of our clients, still do, is I was always shocked at the amount of technicians that were gamers. I think we always think like, oh, that technician's going to be an outdoorsman, and they're all like, like their interests are always in cars. And when you take a step back and you isolate technicians and look at them from a personal standpoint, I think you're really surprised on who these people are, right? It's not always that traditional mechanic that we always saw. A lot of technicians have different interests than maybe what traditionally was thought.
Right. In the time I've been in this industry, exactly what you're saying. It's a wide range. I've worked with technicians like very much that are, information technology is their hobby outside of work. They are up to date with all the newest technologies that you can think of as far as social media, telecommunications, all of that. And that's what, their interests are. I've worked with other technicians that, I'm woodworking. Like I knew a guy that, he could go home and take a valuable piece of work and make it into a guitar. A lot of times technicians are creators and builders of other things.
Those people make me jealous, by the way, because I suck at all that.
For me personally, I kind of maybe fall into more of that. At least when I was younger, I fell into more of that traditional, I worked on cars outside of work, mainly, my interests have never really been in the high end market as far as myself personally. But I've been heavily involved in the, restoration and building of, classics and customs, and not so much anymore, but now really I focus on motorcycles, and I just a hobby. I don't do it for, any kind of professional, side work or anything, but I do enjoy riding motorcycles and working on things. It's actually kind of, to me, refreshing to work on like, I guess you could say technology of the past, just to see how simple it was. But then again, also how well it was engineered and to accomplish something that today we're using computers and networks and electronics to accomplish.
Yeah, I agree. I found myself, and probably more so after I got out of a shop, and it took quite a few years. I was kind of burnt out, to be frank with you, but once I got past that point and I kind of got the joy back of working on cars and working on equipment, and I end up spending a lot of my time behind a computer screen or on the phone. It's turned into such a cool, almost break for me, right? I'm not on social media. I'm not on the computer or on my phone. It just kind of, I'm distanced, and it does a really good job of that. But I do have to ask, what's your favorite project you've ever worked on?
So I do have a 1960 Ford F100 that I've had since I was about 20 years old.
Oh,
I'll be 37 next in August. So, and it's gone from basically your stock farm truck to my goal with it is a traditional 60s like Watson style custom.
that is
So very,
cool.
very low to the ground, all the body work done in lead, very much trying to build it with the type of materials and tools that would have been available in the 60s.
Did you do the lead work?
I didn't do the lead work. Like I said, I'm fortunate enough that I have a brother-in-law that was his career path. He works in a custom shop in Southern California now, and he's one of their lead painters. But he was fortunate enough to be taught lead work by someone who was taught by Gene Winfield.
Wow. There's not very many people left that can do any type of lead work. I mean, that's an impressive skill set, and the fact that you've got it done on your truck, you got to send me a picture of that, because I will geek out over that.
I will.
So let's talk even further about this then. Let's dive a little deeper. So when it comes to understanding technicians, I think we've established that it is looking at a technician more at a personal basis, and not assuming every technician is the same, and not assuming they all have the same interests. Is that something that you see starting to shift in our industry? Are we getting better as an industry at being able to see a technician for who they are and not just grouping them in as a whole? Or are we still battling the same stuff that we've battled for decades?
At a certain point, I think it's improved in a little bit in certain ways. And then on the reverse side, we're still battling a lot of the same issues. Because like you said, if you have a technician maybe in their personal life that, they gravitate towards, technology and information, especially here on the independent side, sometimes you have to be really resourceful to get a repair done, because we may not have some of the tools available that a dealership does, diagnostic software, programming software, and things like that. There are technicians that can use aftermarket programs and take a used control module, wipe it, recode it, and custom do coding to make the vehicle do different applications. And that's a skill set that, a shop owner should recognize, especially if, I would say 90% of the shops out there right now, you're working on vehicles that are probably anywhere from 12 to 5 years old that are your main customers. And, the ability to have someone that can go in there with a laptop, figure out how to make this computer do what it's supposed to do. Why is it not, that's a very valuable skill. And that's not something that, like you said, maybe someone who is more traditional would have. They may not have the interest to go beyond, well, I know how to use the diagnostic software, but I don't really know what the coding is doing or what the programming is doing. So if you have someone that has that skill set, that's someone that you need to, put a check mark on right there and say, okay, we need to further investigate this and develop. And then you might have someone, I was going to say, and then you might have someone that, you could put an engine in front of them and it's making a noise, and, they can have that diagnosed and that engine out and repair done very quickly. You know what I mean? So it's always trying to recognize those skill sets. And luckily, like I told you before, I have a shop owner that very much recognizes those things. He knows if we've got a Mercedes 642 diesel coming in and he needs an oil cooler, so-and-so has done it so many times, that can be an in and out job in 1.5 days. And then the customer's back in their car, and we've saved them a bunch of money over the dealer.
One of the things I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but my dad always talks about how he still feels like there's mechanics and there's technicians, and that, we've tried to kind of all push toward technician, but he said, he's seen some people that are really good undercar people, right? That they can do anything and do it really, really fast, and they're great at it. But when it comes to diagnostics, they just kind of disappear, right? And so he always distinguishes it in his head as the mechanic handling the mechanical side, the technician handling more of that, just what you were talking about, right? More of that technical side of diagnostics, and maybe even grabbing a picoscope or being able to dive into something and be able to understand that. And that to get the combination of the two is a really special person. Like I don't know that there's, I don't want to say they're unicorns, but it does feel more and more each day like there's a pretty wide gap between the two.
Yeah. And that was something that, as far as my career path, as far as the dealerships that I worked at and manufacturers I was associated with, that's something that they very much strive to do. So it's very uncommon in the Euro field to have like your chassis tech, your brake tech, your transmission guy. You were trained when you went to a vehicle training, it's complete. You're going to know, they're going to go one day, you're going to go through the engine class, you're going to go through the transmission. And then usually the mechanical stuff went pretty quick. And then the rest of the time you're sitting there talking about CAN networks and most buses and FlexRay and all this other stuff. But they expected you to be confident to repair from A to Z. If you work at a BMW dealership or an Audi dealership or a Mercedes dealership, there was no, okay, this is a mechanical suspension problem, then you ship it off to the chassis guy. That doesn't happen. So obviously there's differences. What's that?
I mean, is that good for you? Do you enjoy that part?
I do, because the exposure is, like I said, you gain more confidence as far as recognizing a platform and being able to diagnose and repair when, you're exposed to different things. And because, if you get a vehicle and you're the transmission guy and you figure out, okay, they came in for a shutter, but I've determined there's nothing wrong with this transmission, where do you go?
Right.
And, it's something that, that, like I said, that exposure to multiple systems and figuring out how they work together and being able to repair them and be able to isolate it on the entire vehicle, it does take some getting used to, I would say, for some people that haven't had to do it. But like I said, just because of the career path that I chose, as far as the manufacturers I was associated with, that was just the norm. So there wasn't really a choice. So it was, you either made it or you didn't. And I think that's a lot of the reason why too, sometimes dealerships, as far as some of your European makes, have a harder time finding people. And then also too, why a lot of aftermarket shops usually exclude the Euros from their service list.
It's an interesting thing. Now, I want to kind of dive into a little bit more on you as a person, and really, I think what we're preaching to all these shops is get to know the person, and maybe we need to do that here just a little bit.
Technicians, are you looking for a new job? Even if you're just casually looking, you need to check out Reverse Job Posts. Reverse Job Posts flips the traditional job board around. Now you can fill out a short questionnaire and let shops reach out to you with job opportunities. No resume needed. The best part is all of your contact information remains anonymous until you are ready to share it. It's a great way to explore new job opportunities, and it's completely free. Download the WrenchWay app in the App Store or on Google Play to try Reverse Job Posts for free. Links to download are in the show notes.
So walk me through what drives you. What is it that what makes you want to get out of bed in the morning and go work on cars? Like, what is it that really gets you pumped up about your job?
Like I said, so I've spent this coming February will be 20 years in the industry. So as far as, new makes and models and the enthusiasm, that I call it the road and track mindset. You know what I mean? People who are excited to drive the new car, they want to know all the details and specs. And, that's not normally what drives me. Horsepower numbers, 0 to 60s. I mean, it's like, whatever. Yeah. But for me, it's like, okay, I know that we've come a long way in CAN networks. Okay, are we still using a traditional PT CAN on this new vehicle, or is it communicate? Are we now using FlexRay technology for the CAN network, or this and that? Knowing the inside details of the vehicle and how it works. For me, like I said, it's being informed so I can refine my skill set. And because that's what really drives me, is that I have a valuable skill set and I want to know and I want to know as much as I can, but I also want to be as good at applying it as I can be. So my drive every morning is, how am I going to improve on my performance from yesterday? And when I see this particular issue again, what are the key things that I need to know to see it again? And when I see it again, and So that's what now, as far as what drives me to get up in the morning, it's like I said, it's not so much that enthusiast mindset of I like being around cars. It's, there's a complex issue here, and it's here because other people couldn't figure it out. And now it's in front of me, and I'm pretty much this person's last hope where they're going to give up on the car.
I think that's a similar trait amongst great technicians, is that just what you said right there, is being able to fix something that others can't, and being able to take pride in always learning and always getting better. I'm curious as to where you look for those opportunities. Where are you finding this information of what you should be learning, and then where are you actually going to learn the information?
So the shop that I work for, we do subscribe directly to BMW's cloud network, as well as Mercedes-Benz clouds network. So what that also gives us is, we may not get the in-class portion of their vehicle training, but all the manuals are there for all the new vehicles. What's being sold in the dealership right now, I can log into my aftermarket BMW login and have the training for, the brand new whatever is on the showroom. I can have the manual right in front of me. So I can go through there and, as best as possible, inform myself on that vehicle. We also we use LMV quite extensively, and they have a lot of training videos, and they have a lot of webinars where they get people like me all together, and we'll go over a system. Like I did one last summer, was for the new, it's a system built by Continental, and a lot of the European makes are using it. They call it the mild hybrid 48-volt system. And this is brand new. It's on brand new cars, and we're going over it for the aftermarket. So when you do start to see these vehicles, because you never may know, if you're driving a BMW and you could be, in the middle of nowhere, Montana, and there's no BMW dealership in Montana, but there may be a Euro shop there, and they just happen to like, oh yeah, you lost the belt on your starter motor generator. We've actually gone over the training for that, so we can get that fixed for you. Getting the parts might be a different issue, but like I said, if you take advantage of those resources, you're going to at least know what's out there, what's the newest, and it's not going to be foreign to you. So then that takes away some of that apprehension of, do I want to work on these vehicles at my facility, or can I find information? It's an investment. Information isn't free, and you have to see the value in it. And if you can apply that information, and you can start bringing in some of those vehicles and making it profitable, I would say that some of those aftermarket subscriptions directly to the manufacturers are definitely worth the investment. It's not a small sum of money, but the benefits pay off, because at our shop, we can order a brand new ME from Mercedes and program it directly from Mercedes cloud. You don't have to worry about software being, corrupted because it's coming from an aftermarket source or any of that.
This week's episode of Beyond the Wrench is brought to us by RepairPal. RepairPal connects consumers with certified, trustworthy repair shops. RepairPal's network of over 2,700 shops nationwide undergo a rigorous certification process to ensure they are high quality. If you're interested in working or getting your car serviced at a trusted shop in RepairPal Certified Shop Network, check out their directory of auto shops at repairpal.com.
How do you prioritize when you look at training? I know this morning was looking at WorldPac had sent out a training email, and I was going through their training. Actually, I was looking at it last night. And when I'm looking through it, I'm like, man, there is a lot of classes and a lot of information there, in being able to understand, like, okay, which one of these is going to be most beneficial, because there's a lot of information there. A lot of their classes are free, like kind of over lunch type of classes. And I think they're an excellent resource. And I know there's a variety of different content developers or training resources that you can use. And I just use WorldPac because it just had come through in my email. But looking at those, I'm like, if I'm putting myself in a tech shoes, I'm somewhat overwhelmed right now because you start throwing in the EVs and the hybrids and
Yeah.
everything, and it could I can see where that would be a real problem in trying to prioritize what training to actually take.
Yeah, so for myself personally, especially like when I started at MBI, my background was heavily BMW. So one of the classes that I specifically, my shop foreman and I both had an interest in for myself was just the Mercedes-Benz powertrain class through WorldPack. So I could just get all the basics of the four-cylinder, the V6, their diesel motor. So I could just be more familiar with it when I looked under the hood. And it was beneficial. The instructor that we had, I was fortunate enough that that class was before COVID, so we got to do it in person, and it was very informative because Mercedes has BMW only does V12s and V8s. Everything else is either straight 4 or straight 6. So I started seeing a lot more V6s when I started working on Mercedes, and it just helps you where do you traditionally look for the timing marks on a Mercedes V6 or this and that, because it's very different than working on a BMW. So that was a class that was very beneficial just because of my lack of familiarity with Mercedes powertrains when I first started with MBI. So, that's one of those things too, where if you hire a technician, and maybe they have certain experience with one manufacturer, you ask them that question. Hey, what do you need to know as far as these vehicles so that we can be comfortable and you're comfortable for us just dispatching you whatever? That's exactly what they did with me. They hired me for my BMW experience, but then they said to me and asked me, what do you want to know about Mercedes so that we can just give you whatever ticket comes in the door?
That's cool. Do you think that's going to drive more specialization in our industry in general?
I believe it will, because, if you have a shop that you just take in everything, some of those things just aren't feasible. I mean, if you work on every make and model, you cannot subscribe to every manufacturer's aftermarket program, because you're talking programs that are from anywhere from $5,000 to $30,000 a year. And it's just not feasible. So I definitely think it is going to become a more specialized industry, especially when you're dealing especially with the Euro stuff. Like, you have a lot of commonality among the Euro makes. You can see some of the philosophy is the same. You can even put a Mercedes, a BMW, an Audi, and Porsche up in the air, and they'll have some of the same parts. You know what I mean? And it's the same with the Japanese manufacturers, the American manufacturers. So I do believe that it will, depending on your choices and manufacturers of you're working on, it will become more specialized. And as far as even in our area, it's very much that way. You have if you're talking about a general repair shop in our area, as far as automotive, those are usually your places that take in American and Japanese and Korean makes. And then, where I work here in Southeast Portland, there's a few shops down the street from us, and it's not uncommon that they'll get a Mercedes or a BMW, they'll get it written up, and then it's just driven right to us.
I've seen that more and more myself. And I want to ask you one more question about the future of the industry, and then we'll dive into maybe some of the pain points of the industry that you and I have discussed before. With the future of the industry, is there any worry that the work will go away or be lessened dramatically? Or are you in the camp that, hey, there's always going to be repairs, it's just going to be adapting to a different type of repair?
I definitely believe there will always be repairs. I mean, I think anyone that has spent enough time in the industry and you see where the not just the automotive industry is going, but just consumer products in general, we're in the twilight of the internal combustion engine. We really are. I mean, you're talking about, as far as improvements in efficiency, you're talking about a technology that's been around for over 100 years.
Yeah.
And so we're in the twilight. I mean, Mercedes announced last year, there's no more V8s after the S580. And, BMW as well, they're going to continue to have a mix of combustion engines and electric, but everything, just look at the political announcement from Germany. All new vehicles will be electric by 2025. If you're going to go buy a new vehicle in Germany, it's mainly going to be electric by 2025. So it's going to be one of those adapting, because the technology has changed, and if you haven't worked on electric vehicles, I'm here to tell you, they break. It's not a, oh, I have an electric vehicle, I'm never going to have to do anything. So it's an adaptation of your skill set.
Not only do they break, the average repair order is pretty significantly higher, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we are servicing, right now we service quite a few of the BMW i3s, and, they still have maintenance requirements. They still have hydraulic brake systems. The batteries are still cooled by coolant that's ethylene glycol based. Like, it's not, I guess you could say, this hands off, I don't need to do anything product, maybe, that the manufacturers are trying to portray it as, you know what I mean? Because they're trying to get people interested. But at the same time, you need to be ready for the fact that when one of these vehicles comes in, like, do I have a high voltage problem? Do I have a 12 volt problem? You know what I mean? And you do need to know those things. Like a BMW i3, if you have one with a range extender, which is just a generator, it doesn't actually propel the engine, your vehicle will be completely dead, like no ignition, no nothing, if the regular 12 volt battery goes bad. Really? So if you have a dead 12 volt battery, you have a completely immobile electric vehicle.
It's this kind of stuff that I'm very much in the middle. I love cars in general. I love internal combustion engines. I love the history of it. I am fascinated by where we're moving as an industry, because I do think with the shift, it's going to change the way that a technician is looked at in general, right? And so when we look at it, and I think there's always opportunity in change, and this is no different than that. It's bittersweet to me, because all the cars we grew up loving, that F100 you got, it's that kind of stuff that you're like, man, I'm going to miss that stuff. But at the same time, for the good of our industry, I do think there's a huge opportunity for us to improve, right? And that kind of brings me to the next topic, which is something we talked a little bit about, but understanding maybe what's not great about the industry. And I think anybody can go out to a Facebook message board and see the posts that are out there. And I think a lot of times they're pretty negative, right? I don't think you don't see a whole lot of text going out there and just blasting off about how much they love their job today. It's typically something fairly negative in context. I'm curious, just from your standpoint, what's some low-hanging fruit of things that we could change about this industry to make it more appealing for a technician? And a technician like you, a technician that's just starting out, what are some things that we need to change in order to make this a really, really great place to be?
That's something that I've discussed intensively with a lot of different people from a lot of different, I guess you could say, positions in the industry. Myself personally, depending on where you're at in the industry, if high end or a Japanese make, or your domestics, we all know what the big elephant in the room is, and it's flat rate. And especially for if you have a technician that you're not getting the services because you're the experienced person, you're getting, this car came in dead, battery is just replaced, we have no communication on this network, it's going to you because you've been here this many years and we know you can fix it. And it's a discouraging factor when you have that skill set where I can take that vehicle, figure out what's going wrong with it, and get it back on the road. And it's a very complex process. First thing you got to do is you get it in there, you confirm the problem, you know what I mean? And then you hook up the scan tool, and let's say you've got no data communication, none at all. And then what are you going to do? Then you're starting to look at, okay, where's my power to my data link connector? Do I have power? All that. So it's a very, very technical process. And it's discouraging when you have to look at the clock, because, if you go over a certain amount of diagnostic on a warranty repair, there's at a certain point where the manufacturer stops paying until you sit there on the computer and say, I'm writing this service ticket. This is where I'm at in my service process, getting an engineer involved. And, That's something that's very unique to our industry. You know what I mean? No one would feel comfortable getting on a plane, you know, when you have technicians that are paid on an efficiency-based scale to get it out as quickly as possible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some people are going to say, yeah, no, I don't want to get on that plane just because that guy can replace that engine or get this electrical working in, 2 hours. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that's very still unique to our industry. And am I saying that in every application flat rate is wrong? No, because there are certain parts of the industry where it's still very viable. Like if you have a technician who is your heavy line guy and he can get an engine transmission out, put it back together, and he can beat the time every time, yeah, he probably doesn't want to be on a salary. But if you have technicians that their core for you is diagnostic, and it's going to be those problems, like I said, it's the customer that we've been to the dealer, they didn't figure it out, or I can't afford for them to figure it out. I'm coming to you, or else I'm lost. I'm just going to get rid of this car. And that's something like in our shop where we have that mix. We have guys that they want to be on flat rate because they're good at I can get this car out, the cylinder head off, back in it, and I can beat that time. And then we have other people, that might have a different pay plan, and, it's more of a salary base with some efficiency, because we can give them the problems that, might take a lot more sitting there with a manual and a wiring diagram. And this is going to really take some time and dedication. And you're tearing into, different spots in the vehicle to find ground points and, twisted, a broken, twisted pair. It's one of those things where people need to start seeing that you need to change some of that tradition.
It almost feels like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it feels like the general perception is that we punish our best.
Yeah.
Being good, right? Like
yeah.
if you're good at diagnostics and you're on flat rate, it's really hard.
Yeah, it's hard to make money on diagnostic. It is. And there's a lot of stubbornness behind the flat rate here in the United States, especially when you're coming from the large dealer networks and stuff. The last 2-week intense vehicle training I did was Jaguar Land Rover Fast Track. And when you're sitting in the class with an instructor who represents the manufacturer, and he's telling you that the time guide is no longer applicable for a reason to pay the technician. These are just numbers that we come up with for basically the warranty accounting, but we don't consider these times to be a viable way to pay you anymore. And you go back to the dealership and they're paying you from that time guide.
Do you think there's common ground to be had there? Because I talk to the other side and I talk to technicians, and we always say here at WrenchWay, we're kind of Switzerland, right? It doesn't matter what kind of shop, it doesn't matter technician or owner, manager, whoever it is. We want to get everybody in the same room and talk about these things, because I think in order to move forward, we've got to kind of get this stuff out on the table. But I'm curious from a technician standpoint, if one, you can kind of see where management comes from and how they're charging for that, but then two, is there common ground to be had there? Is there something where we get people in a room and we talk about this and we say, okay, let's start with diagnostics. What can we do to do this better? And what can we do to make sure that we're being paid for our time appropriately? Do you think there is common ground to be had there?
I do think there is. Like I said, it's that, one of the things that BMW started doing, probably I would say it started coming around in probably 2013, 2014, is you had your diagnostic team and you had a repair team. And then, so it would go in, the vehicle would go in, it'd get diagnostic, you would get a confirmed repair, maybe parts ordered, and then it would go to the repair technician. Now, is that model, perfect? No. And did that model at the dealerships include any type of salary? Usually not. But those are still some things that could be adapted in the aftermarket. And I think even now, a lot of dealerships and I guess you could say dealer networks are open to more of a hybrid compensation system as far as directly related to the vehicles, because of the sheer lack of talent in the industry. Like you said, there has to be a balancing point. If you're going to stick to your guns on one side and say, hey, we're a flat rate shop only, we will always be, I don't care what the manufacturer says, you'll probably end up in the next 5 to 10 years with a shop with almost no one working there. And
I think that's the big concern from a management standpoint,
yeah,
right? And not just management in general. I think there's a lot that, from my standpoint, there's a lot of concern with uh, the folks not just leaving, a technician not just leaving your shop to go to another shop, but leaving your shop to go to
yeah,
Boeing,
yeah,
because that's a huge issue right now. We're seeing it all over the place, and
yeah.
in some cases, I can't say as if I blame the technician.
Right. In most cases, the people that I've worked with in the industry, when they left, it wasn't for another shop. They've left the industry or have gone to a different portion of the industry. Um, the other thing too that I think some of the other shops and some of your more traditional dealer franchises need to look into as far as a model is something I had mentioned to you earlier, because right now they're a big grab for technicians, and that is your strictly EV companies, the Rivians, the Lucids, Tesla. You know, we don't need to, I guess you could say, butt heads too much, but one of the things that they have the advantage of is every single one of those shops and facilities is manufacturer owned. And that's a huge benefit from someone when you have mainly the technical background.
I agree, and I'm fascinated by that. I have heard from some that have gone to EV companies and maybe felt like it wasn't everything that they claimed it was once they got
Right.
there.
Yeah.
But it is a huge concern, because I think what happens is they're looking at it through the lens of a tech company. They're a tech company
Yeah.
that happens to sell cars, right? And when
Right.
you start going up against tech companies, it's again, it's a different type of competition than what we're
Right.
used to, and it's something different. And I think at some level, I think that might just be what technicians are looking for, is just something different. And
Right.
that's where our shops need to make sure that we're on the ball with this. We need to make sure that, similar to what you're doing and keeping your technical skill in check, we need to be from a shop management standpoint, staying at the forefront of that, so
Right.
that we know how to treat a technician and we know what type of competition is out there. Because I think in a lot of ways, if you sit on your hands right now and just say, hey, you know what, I'm going to go in as a manager, I'm going to check the box that I was here today, and I, just kind of went through my normal daily putting out fires, you're going to get yourself behind the eight ball pretty darn quick.
Right. And another thing that comes up a lot in the industry, as far as, I guess you could say, the driving factors of why technicians leave, unfortunately, is a lot of times your benefits package. And I'm not specifically even talking about your pay rate or your pay plan, but it's knowing that you're going to have, you're putting in a lot of time and effort into your job. And one of the things that an employee who values his employer is that it's that reciprocation. I'm putting in the effort, they're investing in me. And, I've worked for some large dealer networks, and it was, no 401k match. I'm not talking mom and pop shop. I'm talking dealerships that are billion-dollar corporations, and it's 0 to no 401k match. Basically self-funded health insurance. And, those are things that even young people think about now when they're taking a job. Kids are your normal high school graduate is way more informed about finances, investing, and how to make money. You know what I mean? All they need to do is have one of these, and they know they can make money.
Well, I think you hit on so many good points there. And I think as a whole, and I say this a lot in the content that we do, we put ourselves in a big hole as an industry. We've been behind for a long time, especially when you look at us compared to other trades, and what we charge at a door rate, what our effective labor rates are, not being able to produce the amount of income that's going to be able to take care of our people. And I had just recently done another podcast that's going to be released, and what our guest said was that in order to, basically, she had gone out to a shop and said, listen, I don't know. It was funny. She didn't have any car background, and she came out and she was like, my job is to make you guys more money and make you as an individual more money. And, I don't know anything about cars. I know that I'm good at process and I'm good at business, and I need to make you more money. And I thought that was so refreshing to hear. Like it was just like a different, like she was going directly out to the team and saying,
Mhm.
if when you guys do better, we do better as a business. We just need to take care of you. And I thought that that level of transparency and that level of just candidness, where you go out and you're not, it's not the elephant in the room. It's literally, I'm going to go out, I'm going to talk to these techs and I'm going to hit it right on the head. My job is to make you more money, and we shouldn't feel bad about that. We shouldn't, we need to be paid as the incredibly talented professionals that we are in these shops. And as managers and as owners of businesses, your job is to make them money, and their
Mhm.
job is to then put out the work so that you can create more of those benefits, and you can, create this kind of ecosystem that's going to help you take care of your people. And if
Right.
we don't do that, and if we don't take that profitability very, very seriously, both from the shop side and the technician side, it's going to be a long road to hoe here.
Yeah, you used the right word there when you just said it's that ecosystem. You know what I mean? Um, a lot of times, especially in that dealer environment, you have, your front end. You have your front end of the service department. You have your sales department, and you have the shop, and they're often viewed as different elements instead of, like you said, instead of a cohesive environment that works together. And as far as like, just, in conclusion on a lot of this, especially for the dealer environment, if you can get rid of that and cultivate a culture where you're all working together and there's no difference in the professionalism in your salesman as far as the importance to your technician, it's going to go a long way. It's going to go a long way, because from someone that's worked at, a few of your dealerships and all of them being high end, selling very expensive products, it still had that, suit and tie in the front, grease monkey in the rear. You know what I mean? And that's how you got treated. And that's one thing, as far as, especially with younger people, they're not going to, a lot of young people don't put up with that kind of treatment. I'm a professional. I deserve the same respect and the same, opportunities as, the salesman selling the $100,000 car, as the person, servicing the $100,000 car.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing that, and it really doesn't cost any money to do that, to make an inclusive environment. Like you're saying, like, stop looking at it as, look at it as the whole, you know what I mean?
Well, and I give Tesla credit for pushing the envelope on this. And then I give Ford actually credit here recently. A lot of dealers are going to hate to hear this, because I think when Ford came out with the dual dealer model, where you've got the EV model and you've got the traditional model, and they kind of said, hey, listen, if you want to be on this EV side, you're going to have to play by our rules. And I think when you look at that, even the threat of direct to consumer from a manufacturer, where does the dealer's value come from, right? It's
Right.
from the back end of the shop, because
Right.
that's stuff that the manufacturers really can't do or don't want to do. And so when you're looking at your value of what you bring to a manufacturer, that's heavily reliant on the back end of it. And
Hmm.
I think dealers are starting to wake up to this. I know there's a lot more fixed ops directors, or not fixed ops directors, there's a lot more GMs coming from the fixed ops world. I think uh, our industry is evolving, and I think that's one thing. Sometimes I'm probably too critical of our industry in that capacity, where I would say in the last year or two, I've started to see significant shifts in what companies are doing to make their technicians happy. And it's becoming something where they're actually doing stuff, not just saying that they appreciate their people, but actually doing
Right.
stuff that shows it. And so hopefully the shift is coming. I think the more types of conversations that you and I can have like this, and that our industry can have like this, and really kind of come together as one and say, okay, whether you're independent, whether you're a dealer, it doesn't matter. Let's make this better for everybody. And I
Right.
think a lot of the stuff that you've said today kind of hits directly on the bullseye in terms of what some of the stuff we have to do to really kind of shift our thinking and change.
Yeah, I mean, because if you break it down to the very basics, you know, this, what we're trying to accomplish is to make this industry competitive at the same level as someone who would be interested in working for Apple or Google or, Rivian or Tesla. We need to bring the traditional automotive field up to that game to be competitive with them, because we're really after the same people. You're after the same people. You're after the people who have that engineer mindset, the fixing mindset, those that crave just the knowledge of how things work. And those companies are doing a better job at grabbing up those people. And you're talking about, kids that are coming out of high school that, if you made our industry and the education process just as desirable as someone who's wanting to go and develop apps for Google or whatever, it's going to change the market, because you're going to be pulling in that talent, that is really revolutionizing some of those industries. And that's the kind of basically new blood that we need in the traditional side of the automotive industry. Because like I said before, there's not a lot that really separates us from the tech field anymore. Pretty much the last part of that is the internal combustion engine. And like I said, we're in the twilight. So right now is when we need to start laying that foundation of this is a viable industry for people interested in tech industry.
It's crazy how much this is starting to shift. And I think for me, the more we can get voices like yours out there and talking about this and really dissecting what some of the issues are in our industry. And look, our industry is not perfect. There's not an industry out there that is, but the more we can really drive for improvement, and the more we can have the voices of technicians out there talking about, hey, this is what we got to do to keep up. This is what we got to do to keep up. The more we can do this, I think the more we get people rowing in the same direction. So I appreciate you taking some time out of your day today, joining me to talk about a few pretty cool things and some things that I think we've got to work on. And so I hope we stay in touch, and I hope we get you back on some other podcasts or some roundtables that we do, because I think you spoke very well from the seat of a technician, and that's what we need more of in this industry, is more of that insight and really the boots on the ground feedback to improve this thing.
I appreciate it. I enjoyed it as well.
All right, we'll get you back on. We'll put maybe some contact information in the show notes, but love to have you back on again. Appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks, Jay.